it as the original.
Yes.
And that,
Having,
no, that's
having said that, it would be difficult for an agency or a client to have an open-ended amount of money that they're gonna pay. So you wanna build that into your per word rate rather than say, okay, otherwise you have a situation where the per rate, your translation work is worth $100 and you spend 6 hours researching, and now the bill is $500.
Right.
So nobody's going to agree to that.
Right.
So there has to be some sense of what's going to be the final
that's
charge.
true.
Right.
So if you build it into your rate rather than an hourly for research,
Yes. Right.
that would probably be a
But I
better.
think you should show them the difference.
Right, and that's also why the rate for a certain language is not set and fixed. You know, there's a range that you can charge. Like, let's say, from anywhere from 10 to 15 cents, depending on the complexity of the text, how much research you have to do, and all of that.
Aneta, sorry. Let's keep the questions for later because we want to hear everything else that our guests have.
Right. Right. We can talk maybe about this a little bit more afterwards.
Absolutely.
About the money
Afterwards, we
issue.
can talk about anything in the world.
But because we also wanted to touch on some ethical questions, and Mikio wanted to talk a little bit about that, and about client expectations, for example. Do you want to touch a little bit on the ethics question?
Sure, yeah. Well, this would be for the interpreting side of the business, even though it applies in some cases to the translation, such as you don't contact the clients directly if you're getting the work through an agency. For the interpreting, we also thought that more people here would be students going into the field, and so we kind of prepared some remarks based on that, but they apply to anyone anyway, regardless of your age, right, or whatever we do. So of course we always want to keep confidentiality. When you go to any interpreting assignment, you don't discuss it with anybody, basically. You keep absolute confidentiality, because this can be a legal case, it can be a medical issue where HIPAA regulations kick in, and you are expected to keep the most strict confidentiality. Obviously, you dress appropriately and show up with jeans and sneakers to the assignment. You want to be there on time, early if possible, so you can deal with any potential obstacles. When you interpret, you want to convey exactly what is said. You don't want to add anything or leave out anything. This is particularly very important in, again, medical and legal fields, because it can be the difference between giving a patient the wrong treatment or worse, not to mention in the legal field. In the legal, often you are faced with a situation where the witness who speaks your language, and that's what you're there for, wants to get a little friendly with you. They may be intimidated by the whole situation, being in a courtroom or being deposed by 5 lawyers in a very difficult case with a lot of money involved. So it's always hard for the interpreter to know how much to be open and available and warm towards the witness, but we must maintain very strict standards of you don't want to be caught chatting with a witness at any point. So you are polite, but at the same time you keep some distance, right? You don't want to appear to have a bias here. So that's very important. Same thing, often your work is much appreciated by everyone, and they say, hey, do you have a business card? You don't want to hand them your own business card. If you have an agency card, assuming you go through an agency, you want to have something that you give to them,
That's what I
even
meant by
though they
conflict of
might,
interest.
they might give you a contact name often, and they have your number, you have their number. You know, you don't want to go around the agency and try to get work from them directly. All those things are important. I don't know what else to add here.
Can I just
No,
say
that's
one thing?
That's very good, Amicia.
That's what I
Thank you.
meant by conflict of interest, that
Right.
if you're out on a job
Right.
doing something and somebody says to
Ask
you,
you,
I like your work, or I have somebody else who needs a translator or an interpreter, whatever, is that a conflict of interest?
Well, if you're through an agency, then
On
you,
one job,
on that job, you have to, in our world,
Yeah.
give the agency name and
Yeah.
say, call the agency and let them know, and then next time they will ask for me again. They will hire me
Yeah,
again
yeah.
for you, because that's why
Request.
we do that.
Yeah.
Because if we know that a client likes a particular interpreter, we try to always book that interpreter with them, because that level of comfort is important, right? So, yes, when
Yes.
you're hired through an agency, you give the agency name, you don't give your own information.
Not
That's,
only-
that's the
yes.
ethical standard that's in our,
And when it happens,
Industry.
because it happens, so the client gets your cell number because she has to go through security, and that's,
right,
you know,
yeah,
these
that
days.
can happen. of
Then
course.
they call you and you say, I'm sorry, I'll have to take this, I may be available, call the agency. And then we call you, I mean, it's not that we call somebody else, because clients also make mistakes, they don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
But
they
you can
see
tell them,
Yeah.
you can tell them, you can have the agency request me, you can give them your
Exactly.
name. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
And we, as an agency, these two would never go behind our backs.
No,
We know
never.
people who do. They are on the back. We appreciate the honesty because we are honest with you and you're honest with us.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
so
why it's like a relationship building.
there is
So-
a standard.
And then
that- yeah.
sometime because, let's say, I got a job through Translingual, and the client wants our direct contact information to share files. And then, for the next time, they email me directly for a job. What I would typically do, I would respond with my availability, but then I would copy Translingual on the same email. So, and then I would tell them, please contact Translingual directly to arrange, whatever logistics.
Now,
And
there are
that's the right-
cases-
Right way to do it, so.
Right.
There are cases where they do not want the same interpreter on purpose.
Mhm.
Like for the
Mhm.
legal case, you
Yes,
may
that
want
is
like
true,
a
yes.
random judge.
True.
You also want a random interpreter.
Yes.
Mhm.
You don't want the same interpreter coming back, being familiar with the case,
It's very
because they're supposed to be there just neutral. You're absolutely neutral. You don't show any bias neither with the lawyer that's paying the agency and you, or the witness or whoever is paying you, doesn't matter. You're there to be completely neutral.
In fact, I think somebody told me once, and I think it's true, and you would agree, the interpreter has to disappear. You shouldn't even know there is an interpreter in the room.
Yes.
The interpreter sits on a corner, be like.
Invisible.
Right,
It's
you're supposed to
you
be
are
invisible.
invisible.
It's
You
like
don't
with sign
exist.
language, now it doesn't
Yes,
matter, it could be a male
exactly.
voice for a
Yes.
female
Yes.
deaf person or
But you
vice
don't exist.
versa. Right, exactly.
You want to be
In a way,
as
yes.
invisible as possible.
Exactly.
Like a referee in soccer or baseball,
Right.
you don't want them to be the topic.
Yeah.
You're
They're
just there
Yeah.
to,
too
as if they were talking to each other.
Yes.
And by the way, you always speak in the first person.
Yes.
You
Yes.
never say, oh, she's saying this or he's saying that.
You're
You
the
always
voice,
speak in
yes.
the first person precisely because you were not there. They're talking to each other.
I will also just add, as someone who works with direct clients, that agencies, that is an entire huge part of the work.
Right,
The
absolutely.
maintaining the client relationships. So I have worked with agencies, I work with a lot of direct clients. They're just different roles. And it is absolutely in the translator, the interpreter's interest. I've had, clients sort of, you want it in terms of maintaining that distance, that professional distance. And it is absolutely essential.
Yes.
So,
In fact, one of the things we do usually, we don't share your information with our clients ever because it's a privacy issue there. Otherwise, your name.
the liability.
Well, not only that,
But
When
also
we-
the privacy.
but the privacy. You know how many times actually every other client tells you, "Oh, can you give me the phone number? I want to call them. I want to tell them." And I'm like, "You have to call me." Then I call the right person, and I'm here for you. I'm gonna, disappear, but it's a privacy issue. And one of the reasons why independent interpreters work for agencies because we are in the middle. This,
And we take care of all the problems.
Yes.
yes.
Because there are lots of
Yes.
problems sometimes, and we have to do a contract, and, you have to chase after the payment and all of that.
Who has
And-
insurance? So
And they are working for us, they know that we pay them.
Yeah.
We're chasing down the payment. Okay, so that's the advantage of working with an agency. You may get
Sometimes,
paid
yeah.
maybe a little less
depends on
because we have to mark up, right?
Yeah.
But you have the assurance when you know the agency that you're getting paid on time, and you're gonna get more work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah. They're
that's the
doing all the work.
advantage of doing that,
Yeah,
because we're going after the clients, we're maintaining a relationship with the client, we're building new relationships with new clients, and so you have a steady stream of work. If you are a good linguist, we're gonna call you over and over and
yeah,
over
that
again.
actually goes into what we were
Right.
going to discuss next. What does an agency want? What do we want when we look for translators?
Yeah.
Tell us now.
Okay, go ahead.
Actually, we deal with a lot of young, not young, experienced, unexperienced. Like translators come in all walks of life, but the one thing that is important is that do what you promise you're gonna do. Deliver on time. Do not pretend you didn't get my email. If I don't say you said you were gonna send me the job at free. You tell me, because you have to think that what I'm doing to you, somebody else is doing 10 times to me. So as a project manager, I've been a project manager for a very long time, and I love my job. I really do. What I don't love is becoming a babysitter. I'm not a babysitter. You are a professional, I'm a professional. You have a problem, you let me know. I let the client know. It builds up. So what does an agency look? I look for a decent CV, some experience. Sometimes people have no experience, but they have very specific fields of interest. They are very important. I don't know, the famous chemical engineer. But especially, we look for punctuality, precise translations. Of course, if you make too many mistakes, you are not going to be a good translator. Try to be good. But also, we're going to know, the beginning, I started and I was really rough, I think. My proofreader had to change a lot of things. The second time, she didn't have to change these many things because I learned and I hope. The third time, and now I'm a proofreader, I don't translate anymore, but we look for professionalism, which I think we find. I think that we have a way, of course, we have screening, we have tests, and we have ways to figure out who pretends to be a translator, who is really a translator. And for interpreters such as them, we really look for, actually we found perfect interpreters here because you usually prepare yourself, you know the subject matter, you arrive on time, you do what more or less
Right.
agreed to do, and it is not rocket science. We don't look for rocket science.
No,
We
it's
look-
very basic, really.
yeah, basically. It is. There is also as we said, an exchange, a civil exchange of opinions. Sometimes it could be said, I'm using you as an example, but it's not for you. Say that the client calls me and said, "You sent me that Emilio Marathon. It was terrible." Usually, my response to the client is never happened, and that's why I can do it. My answer would be, "Okay, I'm sorry that you experienced this negative moment with Emilio. I'm very surprised because usually Emilio is an excellent interpreter. Tell me what happened." And then it turns out that they asked for a French translator, but the secretary asked for a Spanish interpreter. So we send Emilio, who arrives there and says, "I'm sorry, I do not speak French." You guys laugh, and I am actually the comic relief here, I guess. But this happens because clients don't understand that Chinese is not Japanese.
Or Cantonese and Mandarin.
Cantonese and Mandarin, hoo-hoo. And Russian and Ukraine for you guys is very, very close to you. But Spanish from Mexico, Spanish from Spain.
It's different, yeah.
Different. And you don't send a Spanish from Spain interpreter to a deposition for a Mexican guy from Mexico because yes, they do speak Spanish and maybe it's gonna work. But maybe the client goes and says, "What happened?"
Right.
And so on and so forth. But the civil exchanges that usually once somebody works for us, we do trust them. So my conversation with the media, what happened? They said that something went wrong. Is it true? It wouldn't be, "Emilio, what did you do?" That had never happened once. We tried to, yeah. So
Yeah, so, but basic professionalism, as in promptness, accuracy, quality, you know, and courteousness, you know, having a relationship where, also trust-based. So that's what we're looking for, in our partners.
Do you reject anybody?
Yes.
Do we reject anybody, like translators?
Clients.
Oh,
Clients?
guys, oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
We are very
Yes.
lucky, I have to tell you. We are now at the point that we know when a client is not going to be a decent client. And sometimes you think, if you're like this at the first meeting that you have, how are you gonna be when we're actually in the middle of a project, something goes wrong? Once in a while you say,
No, thank you, but no thank you.
not obviously we can,
Yeah.
not every day, but.
But we have done that, and we have also done it for other reasons,
Yes.
ethical reasons.
Yes. We
Because
do
the
not
client,
work with certain law enforcement agencies who
Right.
want to put immigrants in prison, I'm
Right.
sorry.
and it happened to us that one of our clients actually veered into that direction, and they were bought out by another company who manufactures the bracelets and stuff like that,
We stopped.
and we stopped working with them because we care too much about our work, that is
Yeah,
dedicated to
it's-
helping
It's-
immigrants,
Yes.
you
yes.
know.
That would
And
have
if
compromised
that
too
was
much.
a conflict of interest, truly, so, yeah.
Well, yeah. That was not a difficult decision.
No, it was not a difficult decision.
But there are other clients that we respect the client. If you say sign a contract for $30,000, which for us is a nice contract, yes, and then you don't pay, and 6 months later you come back because they do this, I don't think you're gonna be my favorite client. I don't think I'm gonna jump. I don't. Mm-mm. Why do I have to? I mean, respect is respect, you know.
Plus, you still have to pay your translator, so.
Yeah, as an agency, by the way, we are that one of our biggest problems. We are in the middle, so we have this ethical idea that we pay our translators on time. Then we have to go with clients and they have to pay us.
I have
on time.
other ideas of what on
But it's
time
okay.
means.
But that's, you know, we know, yeah, it is a game. I think we wanted to talk about some industry developments.
Yeah.
Because we talk about prices and quite a lot, I think.
So,
Yes.
in terms of industry developments, I think all of us have a lot to say. I can speak specifically, we want to talk about artificial intelligence, AI, and machine translation versus human translation supported by technology. So I have several colleagues who do use computer-assisted translation tools, also known as CAT tools.
Yes.
I personally have never used them simply because it's not applicable to my job.
Mm.
And because I'm doing a book length text or maybe even an article, the simplest way I can think of to say this is if the source language, if the source text was created by a thinking, feeling, sentient human being, it has to be translated and rendered in the other language by a thinking, feeling, sentient human being.
Very well said.
I like that.
So, and I will also say, I go on to Google Translate and I go to DeepL, and I plug in phrases, I plug in words from projects because I think, these are these tools that tap into existing language that is out there. What will they do with it? And it's changing all the time, right? The phrase that I plugged into Google Translate and said, turn this from German into English, 3 years ago, it'll do it differently now because it's drawing from a different corpus. Almost never does it work. Simply because that's literary work, but it's also the academic article where the program is saying these exact letters or characters or words map onto a previous usage, and it would be this, but your author is either taking it out of context or interpreting it differently, and it really requires immense attention. So that's
one development.
Human brain.
And I
Well,
mean,
because-
that's why our job is so much more vast, really,
yes.
than just typing in a different language, because that's what a lot of clients in this country seem
Photocopy
to
machine.
think. They seem to think that we just, convert this into something else and just by just typing. And our job is often that we have to, have these extensive conversations with clients who think, we have all these tools and AI, and why do I have to pay you so much, etc. Is to say, when we translate a marketing text for you for, let's say, a beautiful cream, and you have to, convert this into 5 languages, and it has to be sellable. You want to sell your cream, right? Then there's some thinking involved. There's cultural adaptation involved. They tried to create this thing called transcreation, which I think is a joke, because we can just call it translation and know that in translation there is thinking involved, there is cultural adaptation involved, and there's creation involved. Translation is an art, and I think that we have to defend that art. There is a place for machines, yes. Obviously we use, CAT tools with certain clients for certain purposes, but there are tools, and they need human intervention because the final product still has to have a certain quality and we have to be able to appeal to people in the other culture, and build that bridge and not just throw words at people and actually communicate. So that's kind of the difference between the two, and that's what we try to do in our work. But there is a big development out there, and people are pushing for more machine and for more automation. It has its limits, though.
I think it's also, if I can say it, it's a generational thing.
Right.
People who are born with this, they go to Thailand. We were talking about Thailand. They don't speak, obviously, Thai. They go to a restaurant, they use their phone, they get more or less an idea what they're gonna eat. That is fine with me. It's a fun little. I had this conversation 3 weeks ago with somebody who was really young, a daughter of a friend of mine, who's telling me, you are obsolete.
Oh, we've been hearing that for decades.
I'm obsolete. I'm already like, ciao. I don't have a job anymore. She studies artificial intelligence, so that's her job. And I said, okay, fine. As a tool, yes. As a machine, yes. But you have to have a human behind it. Because, I give an example. This sentence, I like you. All of us here understand it exactly the same, right? I like you. I don't like you. All of us here understand this is the opposite. To a machine, it is 75% the same sentence. Hello? So.
There's a lot of
but
margin
you're
for error.
obsolete.
Yeah.
You're obsolete. So, sorry, I don't want to tell you this, but because I think it is younger adults who have used computers and Google Translate and their phones. They're better at using this technology than we are, perhaps. And then we are better at actually doing the next thing for now, because we have more experience, is taking this I like you, I don't like you, and when you're a translator, you're like, oh, Google Translate tells me, because that's what it is. You use your CAT tool and tells you 75% the same, and it uses the sentence in the other language. So now you have a translation which, to a human, is completely wrong. To a computer, is okay. No bad, 75%. Sorry. I'm done.
And there are entire websites, I'm sure many of you have seen these, devoted to disasters and augmented reality translation.
Yes.
And they're very funny until you think about the cost.
Yes. They're very fun.
Yeah.
For us. I don't know.
So I think also tied in, I'll mention this specifically in the literary translation world for industry developments, is that, our discussion, and unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't want to beat the dead horse of the money issue, but as we've seen in cultural industries that are historically unwilling or unable to pay a living wage, get certain people who work in that industry. And it's people who can afford to, they don't have to make a living. right? And this, so what's happened, and this is, I'm trying to boil this down in a weird way, but, you know, I think to speak specifically about the United States, the publishing industry has looked around and said, oh, wait, the books we're publishing are not representative of the people who are reading the books, right?
Okay.
And this is a huge issue. So, and I won't throw out too many statistics, but this 3% of books published in North America each year originated in another language, whereas you go to another country and 20, 25, 30% of the books that are available are in translation. We just don't reciprocate, we here in the United States. So there is a lack of, you know, historically we've been good at exporting our culture, not so good at importing it, which is why I believe so wholly in my job of bringing stories from other places, times, and cultures into an accessible English. Not every literary translator has that as their project. But I will also say that I'm a member of a couple of, we've mentioned a lot of professional organizations. I'm also a member of a few collectives, and collectives are gaining attention because it's partly, you know, mentorships, the system of, you know, because the professional organizations are scared to talk about how to professionally practice this skill, you know, we really have to do it outside of those professional organizations. So collectives that share the skills, that share the resources, and share the opportunities.
Very
So
well
will
said.
you want to give some name of collectives? People could,
I mean, I can mention, so I'm a member of Sedilla Collective that originated here in New York.